Hello, listeners, and welcome to the latest episode of the AdQuick Advertising Podcast, a podcast that explores the intersection of content, creativity, marketing, technology, all of the things that you care about. Today, we have a special guest. We have Kyle Lacy. He is one of my favorite voices in the marketing sector. He is CMO at Docebo. They're a learning platform for training, working with some of the largest companies in the world. He's a veteran marketing leader. He's worked in SaaS, enterprise strategy, and brand transformation. You've seen Kyle's posts and thoughts online. He's probably one of the better writers on LinkedIn and one of the better voices in our industry on podcasts and in the media. Kyle, we're lucky to have you today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Now I'm going to have to live up to that introduction, Adam. So I very much appreciate it.
And
so
yeah,
thank you.
Actually, for the intro, I asked the AI to write one for you, and it's like 2 paragraphs. Seriously, it's like 300-word paragraphs. It's massive. So I guess why don't I was gonna read it just to see what, because I think the AI did a pretty good job, but it's always more fun in someone's own voice. Do you want to distill like the top line of your story from junior marketer to leading marketing at some of the coolest brands in our space?
Yeah. So I mean, like you, I know I grew up in GeoCities, AOL chat rooms, MySpace. You and I connected originally on FriendFeed, which shout out to the FriendFeed OGs because we all still exist in this market. So I've been posting online for over a good 2 decades, and that kind of shaped how I communicate. It shapes how I structure myself on a daily basis. It shapes a lot of things in the way that I think. But professionally, I began my career at a company called ExactTarget. I started an agency out of college because I couldn't get a job, so that's not as fun to talk about. But ExactTarget was my first marketing role at a software company, and that led to acquisition by Salesforce, not wanting to work at Salesforce because it was too big, then leading to a role in venture capital, and then Series A, Series B, Series C software companies to now Docebo, which is a public software company based in Toronto, Milan, and Atlanta, Athens area. So, from start to finish, it's about how do you surprise and delight the people that you're selling a product to, and how do you build an engine that can do it at scale? Is kind of where I focus across the board.
And I totally butchered your company name. I said it like a dumb
American. You know what, though?
Not like someone from Milan.
No, look, we purposefully have something at the end of a lot of our videos that says it, where it goes like Docebo, because more often than not, everybody butchers it. So do not worry about it. If you want to talk about like a brand thing, it's just something that we have to own.
Yeah, I was reading this interesting post about you know how sometimes people get made fun of for pronouncing a word wrong. It shows a sign of intelligence, because what that means is you read that word somewhere, you knew how to use it, but you've never heard it said before. And I think that's like an okay place to be. Like you learned about this thing and you just had never said it out loud or heard someone else say it.
Yeah.
So I would never make fun of someone for saying
no.
Like,
and it's actually interesting to hear all the different versions of what. It's even better when I have somebody cold call me and I pick up the 1 out of 1,000 phone calls that I get, and they just completely butcher it on the call, because then it's actually a funny conversation to have. But being an Italian founded company comes with its things like Docebo as a name, which is great. It fits our mission, but can be hard to say at times.
I also think it's interesting, Kyle, that you didn't last at Salesforce very long. I spent like 6.5 years at a big company and I tapped out. I feel like you're either that type or you're not. And if you're not, it's like its own kind of torture, and it doesn't matter how much they're paying you.
Yeah. No, I don't have any, I want to be very clear here. I don't have anything against Salesforce. I have some of my best friends have been there for years and they love it because of a lot of reasons. And there's a lot of reasons to love it. I found that me trying to get done what I wanted to do didn't happen at that size. And that size was in 2015, which is minuscule compared to where they are today, right? I need something. What I learned pretty quickly in my career is that I need things to break and I need to break them or I'm going to be bored. And
Yeah.
at a company like Salesforce, that's not really how you're supposed to go about doing work because you don't want to disrupt something that's already a machine. I like rebuilding machines.
Totally. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with being at a large company if that's
No,
for you.
not at
And
all.
kudos to the people who can show up and like do the same thing every day and it doesn't drive them mad.
Yeah.
You know,
Seriously though, because
good
there's
for
a
them.
lot of benefits. There is
Yeah.
a lot of benefit for sure. And there are times during the day where I kind of think, hey, that would be nice, but it's just not the way I was built. I know it's not the way you were built, but
Yeah.
it's what I learned pretty quickly. I think, if you're listening and this has been going on in your head on why I'm here, or if you work at a bigger company, make the decision sooner or later, because it's better if you go investigate what you love instead of just continuing to slog through something you dislike.
Yeah, and what I did find at the big company, because I joined because they threw money in stock at me, and I'm like, all right, whatever,
Yeah.
you guys win. And then I found
It's
I
a
didn't.
pretty good stock too. So
I yeah,
you're right.
I still found after a few years, my soul's not worth it. But the big company probably maintained me for like double the length they would have because
Sure.
they put me on this scrappy team that wasn't like part of like we still were part of a larger org, but we had all of this latitude to be able to do what was right with the user and what we felt was, we weren't sending stuff through 100 layers of approval. We kind of got to make our own OKRs, and I didn't feel micromanaged or constrained. And I think there are like skunkworks teams or like new business units, or like there's parts of big companies that might still be fun to work at if you're at a startup. I find it depends where that big company is in their growth cycle and like what are they willing to invest in outside of what the money making machine is. And I think that's rather telling of like the big companies that kind of stagnate and maybe become a little bit dated and dusty and get disrupted, versus I think the big companies that ultimately reinvent themselves and keep growing ultimately they're able to maintain the weird people that otherwise might have gone to meet the startup.
It's the reinvention thing that I think is the most important, right? If you are like myself, where I need that type of change, like I need something that's a little bit more flexible. I need something that I can reinvent. I need something that I can build or rebuild, right? You need to have that type of mentality, or it doesn't work out for extremely creative people, in my opinion. And there are a few companies out there that have grown exponentially large that have figured out how to retain some of those people, and kudos to them, because that's super hard to do.
Yeah, so that's huge in our sector. Is you're a marketing leader, and big part of your job is retaining and finding and retaining very creative people. And I wrote down this question of I was going to ask you a question about like executives maintaining their CMOs, but actually I want to ask you, how do you view maintaining and sort of retention with your creative team members, or even just getting the most out of them? Like what do you find works really well?
So I'm gonna separate that into two different questions. One is, how do you retain top leadership? But also the second question would be, how do you retain creatives? Because I think there are similarities, but there's some differences. So on the top leadership, there's tons of different ways to do it, but for me, it's investing in their career more than their job. I care deeply about my senior leadership's team ability to get to where they want to be in their career, whether it's here or somewhere else. And it's my job as a leader, outside of driving performance, to help them figure out how to get to the next step in their career. Because you and I both know this is a small world, and we work with some of the same people depending on where you decide to go in your career. So for my leadership team, it is, how do I help you get to where you want to be and be the best at what you do? because the reality is that you probably are going to move to somewhere else, or you're going to excel in this role and probably take my job, right? But I'm okay with that because it always comes back around in terms of good karma or whatever. You help develop somebody, and that means a lot. So from a leadership team's perspective, I think about the career instead of the job. And that applies to the team as well, of course. For creatives, I very rarely talk to them about ROI. Rarely. You are one of the best at it when it comes to the content that you write, the stuff that you talk about, the how you lead people down this idea that you can be creative but also measure it. And what I have found is if you walk into a room of creatives and the first thing you talk about when it comes to a campaign is let's talk about the ROI of the campaign before we brainstorm the creative ideas, you're going to lose all of them, no matter what. You might not lose them in the first couple time around, but you will lose them eventually and they will leave for something else. And you're going to get a bunch of slop instead of stuff that is actually creative. And I don't want to, I mean, game changing is probably the wrong word, but I love the Liquid Death example is probably my favorite. It's one of my favorite brands. And I think it's probably very rare that the creative director, I think his name's Andy, goes into a room and talks to his team about ROI of the whatever campaign idea they have. Now, they're in a very unique position with their brand, but my favorite campaign of theirs is when they sold Ozzy Osbourne's DNA from like crushed cans. I guarantee you there wasn't an ROI discussion before that. And so it's important to note that I think a lot of marketing leaders, and this has kind of evolved over the past decade, but we tend to be more revenue focused. It's something that shifted as attribution became more of a thing and we started measuring more stuff and blah, 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 blah. But I think it limits creativity when a designer or a writer or a videographer is asked about the ROI of a campaign before the brainstorm. So those would be the answers to those two questions.
Yeah, and it's so similar in Hollywood where, low budget movies like Napoleon Dynamite have outsized returns. And it's not like, for the really creative movies that everyone enjoys, like Superbad made like, hundreds of millions of dollars. And like, you can't start with the end in mind there in terms of dollars. You kind of have to start with the idea, and the good ideas are going to find their audience, whether it's media or marketing.
Absolutely.
And otherwise, you might as well just use AI to sort of spit something out.
You're right. Right.
And just get it done cheaper.
It's like that. It's like that mural in London. I don't know if did you see that news article with this massive AI mural that they put up?
No, I didn't see it.
Oh, I'll send you the link. But it was some massive AI mural that they put in some park in London that was horrible, and people just ripped it apart because there was like headless people and multiple arms, and they thought they were being creative and it didn't work. But that's an aside. But that's one recent news that I thought was hilarious because they used it for AI and it was terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of
there's a lot of that already, man.
Yeah. So we started to talk about creativity. That's probably answering my next question that I have for you about what do you think most execs, and not at your current company, just overall, what do you think they get wrong about marketing in general? And how do you think for a different CMO, can you advise them best about some of the common things that they might get wrong?
I have always disagreed with the view that marketing is a cost center. I mean, it is a cost. Yeah, right. At a very high level, it's a cost center. But this idea that it should always be treated as one, I think limits a CMO's ability to do what should be done to create demand, shape market, do messaging and positioning, whatever. And that's why we have seen, at least in the B2B CMO world, we have seen a massive shift to the revenue focused CMOs over the brand focused CMOs over the past decade, which I did. I'm one that did it. I am brand oriented, and I moved into pipeline because that's where I got a seat at the table in the board meetings. They didn't care about the brand campaign. They cared about the coverage for the sales team, right? Which makes complete sense to me, right? That's completely fine. But when a true system works, customer acquisition cost goes down, your sales cycles improve, like all the things that you care about improve. But it's usually limited because the CFO or CEO is only looking at it as a cost center. But that's not their fault. It's the marketer's fault. It's the marketing leader's fault. And if you are a CEO or CFO and you feel that way, you've got to push your marketing leader for more clarity. Like, how are you spending money? Not how do you get more? I think that's the issue. Like, we always talk about, we need more volume. At least, like, especially in the Series A, Series B, Series C world, where venture backed, a lot of high growth stuff. And the reality is that you just need to better understand where they're spending their money and why they're spending it. And if they can't articulate that, you got a bigger issue. But I really think that it's about, how do you have the conversation with your marketing leader and give them space to be creative? Because this goes back to what kills creativity, is immediately going to this ROI discussion. But great marketing leaders, in my opinion, can do both and be able to speak to the true business impact of brand and demand together. And that's it's really hard to do, but that's how you should judge marketing. It shouldn't be completely off of whether you hit the pipeline or revenue number or not.
I would offer one other piece of advice, having gotten to be a marketing leader at like a few different companies around the pandemic, just because it was such a chaotic time. And I would say, if you are a CMO then looking for your next gig, don't work somewhere where the CEO and CFO aren't bought in to marketing and your vision. It just makes it so much easier to work with people who, there are proper villains. They understand marketing. You have a really good relationship because you're going to get to do great work. It's obviously going to turn out better. You're going to ship more things. They're going to give you more money, and everything's just going to go so much better than to be at a place.
Yeah, absolutely.
That just like didn't like you, or was like, yeah, I guess we have to hire someone for marketing. Like, those are always going to be battles. You're going to be spending so much time fighting stupid battles instead of doing the work.
We have to hire a marketer. Well, okay. So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I feel like you and I have done a pretty good job vetting those type of people. How do you vet? How do you vet that? How do you make sure in the interview process that you are pulling that out of the CEO?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, make sure, in addition to just the regular interviews where you talk about the business and the things that you would do for them, like, get lunch or coffee with them as well, and just talk about other things. Like, tend to see how they view the world, talk about creativity, talk about art, talk about not business things. And you can get a really good sense of these guys. And like, it's okay if you're like super, super financial guy, but just remember, I mean, like, kind of penny pitching, kind of, how they view creative people, how they view weird iconoclast ideas. You got to get a little bit more of a sense than just the business. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to bring these results. Have a human conversation with them. I think it's harder to hide behind. Someone can easily say, oh yeah, we believe in marketing, but I think you got to get to know them just a little bit better. And if they're like a complete, if they're just like a complete finance autist, they're always going to be annoying. You need to find someone with a little bit of humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Actually, I don't need to add to that, because that's exactly what I've done. It's like, how do you have a more human conversation with somebody that gets them outside of the job? Because that's more interesting to me. Now, I will say that asking them questions about how they have judged marketing in the past is a decent gauge. And if they're talking all about volume and how many campaigns were run and all that stuff, you gotta kind of suss that out. But I love your idea, because I mean, Alessio, who's our CEO at Docebo, we created a relationship that was more personal before anything else. And I know he has 100% faith in my ability to do my job, and he lets me do it, which is great, which is what you want.
Being bought into the brand of Kyle before you worked there. I think that's true as well. The companies I've stayed
but you got to go both ways, right?
3, 4, 5+ years.
Yep.
I had very good, I think the conversation is almost downstream of the trust. If you can have these really good conversations with people, like they already trust you, and that could be early in the relationship too.
Yep.
So I think, to your point, you have these great relationships, and I think in some cases, maybe the marketing hire is born from a place of stress. Okay, we're going to throw some money at this and see if we can turn it around. And it might be good money, and it might be really tempting. And so if you really need the money, it's okay, but you might get a personal case study out of it.
Yeah. And look, for those of you listening, Adam and I could probably spend the rest of the time talking about what to look for and what not to look for in the interview process, because it is trying. It is a trying thing to do in terms of vetting a company as much as they're vetting you. But I think that as long as you spend some time trying to understand the humanity behind the brand and the CEO and the founders, it gives you a pretty good gauge on whether or not you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah. And one other thing, that marketers love challenges, right?
Mm.
But one thing is, marketers can fall in love with, a turnaround story, or maybe helping a company that's kind of existentially screwed. So just have an honest accounting with yourself. And if you want to go in for that challenge, I totally get it. And maybe you can, but just know going in, how difficult it's going to be. Look at the company's balance sheet, look at what's going on. You may still decide yes, but at least have those eyes wide open.
But a lot of people, and I think it's important to say this, a lot of people do not do that. A lot of people do not ask about a cash on hand runway, product roadmap, like churn, what's your NRR, like all that stuff. I'm very lucky. Like Docebo is a public company. I have access to all that stuff, right? I mean, but if you're going to work for a private company, you need to ask those questions, because it will give you a good gauge on whether or not it's something you want to tackle. But a lot of people don't ask those questions, which blows me away. Absolutely blows me away. I don't understand why you wouldn't.
So Kyle, this leads into our next topic, and we sort of already started to answer it, but I think we can have a little bit more precision on how you think young people should think about their careers, just because the world is so much different. Like if I was going to tell someone, like if it was 2010, what to do, I think it would look like a bit different than today, but also some of it would be the same. So I'm curious, like what you're thinking of things right now.
Man, this is such a good question. I think about it quite regularly, because I can distill it down into three things really, and then we can go whatever direction you want. But your career, or your job, your career is shaped by kind of three things: what you learn, who you learn from, and what you ship. Those are the three things. And what's more important is the second one, who you learn from. Building a network of people that trust you, that you would work for again, is super important when you're optimizing for your career. Do not optimize for a stupid title. Do not do it. Do not go jump every 6 months to different companies because they're giving you a little bit more money and a new title. You have to optimize for people you're working with, because it will come back around multiple times, and you will understand the benefit of creating a deep network of people who trust you, and then your ability to show what you have shipped. And it's amazing to me how often people get that wrong. But that's what you learn. You should always take a job that you're going to learn. You should take the job based off of who's there and who you can learn from, and your ability to ship things that matter, is how I would frame it. Those three things.
I love it. And we used to say when I lived in Silicon Valley, I tell my friends, you're either learning or you're earning.
Yeah.
Because your startup is either failing and you're learning, or you are, having a
Earn-
big
yeah.
win, or you're a big tech and you're earning. So that's, one of those two things is always happening.
Look, the one thing I tell every single member of my team when they join Docebo, or I've done this my entire career. My goal for this individual is that they never have to use their resume to get a job ever again. That's my goal for you. And if I can help you realize that, where you are taking those three things and you're stacking them over 3, 4, 5 years, you should be poached from this job or succeed and take my job eventually. That, like, if you do this appropriately, you won't have to go. I know this is easier for me to say looking back, but you're not going to have to spend a ton of time and energy looking for opportunity, in my opinion. Now, fully realize that that's easy for me to say of who I am and where I'm at today, but it's how I've learned over the past 20 years doing this. So you got to think about that, because a lot of people start a job and they put their head down and they don't think about the network, the community, what you're building outside of the role. And then you wake up 5 years later and you have no options, which I'm sad for people when that's the case.
Yeah, and it's a tough world out there for
It is.
marketers.
Yeah.
Because companies don't value it in the way they should. I don't think they source talent in the way they should. I think, like, I'm like pretty unimpressed with most marketing recruiters in our space.
Yeah.
Not only just the emails that they send are really bad. Like, I just so
You should do a whole episode where you're just reviewing recruiting emails.
the ones that are, the ones that are good are so good. It's like one of those things
for
where
sure.
like the percent that nail it, and everyone else is terrible.
Yeah, but those percent that nail it, you're probably connected to through your network anyway. Like that, I cannot. They don't teach it very well in school. We don't talk about it enough. The network is what matters, in my opinion, and that's why when I'm doing introductions or I'm talking about what I do, that's why I bring up the AOL, the friend feed, the link. Like, that's where I built my initial network of people. And it's to this day, you and I are talking. I don't think we'd ever have thought this when we were, schlinging on friend feed, but I mean, it's great.
Well, Kyle, you said something really interesting that stuck out. You said, I would want my, someone on my team to be able to take my job, right? So that really indicates you're thinking about their career growth. And I've left more than one role where I basically felt that my manager would have to quit for me to be promoted. Not just have their job, but in general, I feel like this person was like a little antagonistic in some cases, like
Mm-hmm.
not because of the work, just because it was like a ruthless environment, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone was kind of out for themselves, and that's not really fun either. That's another reason I'm back at startups, because no one is like that. Everyone's trying to make the machine going. Everyone's got some skin in the game. It's like you're all on the pirate ship, as our CEO likes to say. And when you're on the small pirate ship, there's no time for these Game of Thrones style politics, or kind of taking credit for things on the team that everyone else worked on. It's terrible too. I feel like if you really want to be promoted, or at least if you have healthy management, you would show the contributions of the entire team, because you're the one who organized them. So you want to be like, hey, I got this team to accomplish this, not I did this. So
absolutely, man.
Maybe that's why I never made it very far at large companies, because I don't want to. I'm just really bad at politics.
You know what? I had a situation at one point in my career where I was told that we didn't want to bring people into the executive team meeting to show their work, because they want the executive to be the one that presents it. And I had a real issue with that in general, where I was like, you know what? I don't agree with that, because I am not going to take credit for the work that my team is doing. I am here to support them and shield them from all the bullshit that is thrown at them, right? but I am not here to take credit for the good work. We hire high performers so they can do their best work whenever they want. It's not my job to then take that and try to gain more. I don't even know what you gain when you do that. More credibility because you don't believe it deep down yourself, and it's going to eventually bite you in the ass. And so I have never understood that mentality, and I don't think it's healthy, and I don't think it gets you to where you want to be ultimately if you have any type of empathy. Now, you and I both know there are plenty of people that have zero empathy and they're narcissists, and that's fine. And they can do what they do and they do it well. But for me, I want to support the people around me because it makes the job more enjoyable. And that's all that matters to me, really.
Yep. I think, we've been talking a little bit about, probably you and I in our head when we're talking about this are envisioning very good marketers. Another question I wanted to talk to you about is, do you think there's too many marketers now that maybe only focus on like what's new and it's the metaverse, it's AI, it's whatever the latest release is, probably because they were just outsized rewarded for being early versus like, exercising and strengthening their core competencies on just marketing?
Yeah, you know what? For those of you, I guess for those of you listening, if you're hearing my voice, you're listening. Adam and I were talking before we jumped on, and I made the comment that I pretty much read everything you write because you are the best at this specific topic, which is, what's new versus what works. And if you haven't went and read what Adam writes on, it's called Hot Takes, right? It's a Substack.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Hot Takes, you need to, because he's got a lot of this stuff in there. Now, I will say that marketers in general have this weird thing about shiny new stuff. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we could figure out why, but it's like, the way that I approach it is, if you can't show me how you made the old thing work, I do not care about the new thing. It just means that you're jumping from thing to thing. And I don't care if you've mastered what is currently new. Let's just use AI as an example, because it's the best example right now. That thing is changing every 3 hours, I feel like. I woke up and Gemini 3 is surpassing GPT. And I wouldn't have told you that 2 weeks ago. Right? So you could tell me that you're an AI expert, but we all know you're not, because the tool is too new and we're all trying to figure this out as it goes. So, for me, it's, have you made the old thing work? And if you have, great. I want to hear about all the new shiny stuff that you think is going to work. But that's where I draw the line with my team. And I think that for a marketer, having the knowledge of what works is super important. And also being interesting is better than being early, in my opinion. And that's where you're only interesting if you know what has worked before.
Totally. And I think marketers, the marketers who pushed to be early to new things, I think they really were rewarded for a long time. You were early to, SEO, you got search traffic early, you built the brand. You were early to having a Facebook page. You were promoted by Facebook before Facebook downranked brand pages. And, you were gifted all of these followers just for being early. You were early to cryptocurrencies and you made, tens of thousands of % gains in Bitcoin. Anyway, so there is reward for being early, but I don't know that, to your point, without knowing how to apply it to a craft, it always is correct or it's always right. In a lot of cases, brands might be early to something and it's like, like Coke commenting on the metaverse and it's really awkward and everyone's making fun of them because they're like, hello, fellow kids.
Was it Coke? Who did their like company meeting or conference in the metaverse and only like one person showed up? Was that Coke? Do you remember what I'm talking about? It happened a while ago.
It was something silly, but I think the issue is that the whole world has been conditioned to just say yes to everything, and I think that's good in a lot of ways because our industry is embracing new things and it does embrace new tools, it remains relevant. So that's good. But there's also, to your point, I loved what you said about, hey, tell me like your core competency in storytelling, or maybe even just talk about the favorite campaign you worked on and why, like something that shows you understand the craft, because otherwise, it's the Chesterton's fence analogy. There's this fence that exists and people tear it down and they didn't realize it was holding a wolf back, right? There's a whole Aesop fable around this.
Well, I think you feel, I don't know how you don't feel like a snake oil salesman by doing that.
But there are a lot of those people in our sector.
I know there are a lot. There are a lot. Too many.
And the problem is, you know what it's like? It's like, you might be able to win some quick short-term trades, but you don't win the compounding of the actual long-term investment. And that analogy should make sense to anyone listening, why it's a fool's errand to try to make some fast money when there is big money in patience and in doing things right. And I don't think you get away from that. Even NVIDIA, which is, for a while was the largest company, they're executing on a strategy over decades. They bet on AI before it was cool. We're using AI as a meta example. But the point remains that they have focused on GPUs for so long that they're pretty far ahead. So for any company with marketing, it's not like Coke changes their tagline every other week, or their ad creative other week, or Nike's been saying just do it for decades, right? Like the consistency is so important. And so if you're just doing new things constantly, you're never going to compound anything into a real brand.
Yeah, and I think consistency is the most important part. And I feel like in the world that we live, where it's fast paced and high growth, I think that's changing a little bit now, but definitely the past 10 years with hundreds of millions of dollars being raised for these companies, it's really hard to maintain any type of consistency. And it's ultimately the fault of the board and the executive team for not laying the foundation of consistency from the very beginning. And I think you could argue that there are probably a few companies that have figured out how to scale without that, but most of them, it's about some type of consistency that delivers value. And the same thing applies to your job.
Yeah. The Costco $1.50 hot dog.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah.
That's a marketing decision. And I'm sure they've been pressured to raise that with inflation any number of times. And there's a quote from the founder in the media that I love. And it says, if you raise the price of the Costco hot dog, I will effing kill you.
Well, there's also, Costco's not owned by private equity either, which probably helps. But that's I love that quote, man. That's such a great quote.
and how Costco remembers the importance of loss leader, and because of it, they're like, are they $1 trillion brand? They have to be near that. They have to be like,
they're close. They're definitely close. Definitely close. He knows what he's doing.
And if you were just a midwit finance brain, you might look at the balance sheet and be like, why are we losing money on every hot dog sale? And so but that creative vision, someone who can see the world as more than just a spreadsheet, because humans are infinitely more complicated. They're gonna crush the competitor that just operates as, the Bill Lumbergh type that sees everything as just, okay, how can we make everything faster, cheaper?
Well, and it's the idea of making illogical bets goes back to creativity, which if you were to look at the $1.50 hot dog thing, it's about as illogical as you can get from a line item perspective. But good Lord, if you're in a Costco at 5 p.m. on a Saturday, how many people are eating hot dogs and that pizza? How many people stand there and watch people make pizza, which is also weird as hell in a Costco. I was in there last weekend and there were 15 people watching some dude make a pizza, and it's in damn Costco. Yeah. Like, it's crazy. And it's so illogical, but that stuff works so well because it is. And that's what I love about it. And that's what makes great marketing.
I'm glad you're a Costco guy too. I go with my wife when she goes just because I love it. It's literally like mainlining capitalism in like a good way. They like pay their workers healthcare and stuff. It's like, it's like this great story. And I really also think the $1.50 hot dog and them not raising the price, it's almost a form of fitness signaling that we're a successful brand to do shit like that. And that's not something you could ever put in an ad, but it's just such a great marketing story that you almost need, we were talking about like executives who really understand humanity and culture. You almost need that type of business leader to really understand humanity a bit, to make a few irrational decisions that have these outsized gains for your brand and the culture. And if you can do that, you sort of stand ahead of all the private equity slop.
Absolutely.
And it's just this unfair advantage. And if you do it, you don't even have to spend as much on ads and marketing. You probably spend less
Right.
and still have other people tell your story,
Well,
like we are sharing of Costco.
Absolutely. And ultimately, it comes down to just surprising and delighting. And if you can do that well and you can maintain that back to consistency and execute it appropriately, that's what you got to do. Like a lot of we talk a lot at Docebo about making customers heroes and trying to do that as much as we possibly can, because it's about surprising people. It's about delighting them. It's about thanking them for being a customer. And a lot of people just don't, I don't want to put all of us in this bucket, but there are just quite a few marketers that just don't think that way, which blows my mind, because marketing is such a storytelling craft to begin with. And if you're not telling the story of the customer, then I just don't understand what you're doing. You're optimizing, which is fine, but not that fun.
Yeah, eventually you optimize down to nothing if you're not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything additive. So Kyle, one last question I want to talk about, because I'm talking about this with all our guests. So we touched on AI. I'm curious, as an executive, what do you think AI really means for our work today? And throw a prediction out for 5 or 10 years or whatever time horizon you want.
I think there's something important for younger marketers to hear. AI is not a threat if you're good at what you do and you care. AI is a threat if you're average. And you have to keep that in mind. The people that have the experience, that care deeply about their craft, will use AI more as a tool and force multiplier than anything else. Have I seen AI do anything interesting outside of like compress the time it takes to create things? No, that's about it right now. And that's okay, because it's just going to keep developing. What was the time frame on the prediction? 5 to 10 years?
Yeah.
I mean, look, I don't know about the timeline, because who knows based off of how fast this stuff's running. I mean, marketing, we might not have anybody in marketing in 5 years. I hope not. I hope that's not the case.
One person marketing team, or like
the one person
marketing team.
Right. Or the one person marketer that's doing everything. I would hope that we see a resurgence in the care of brand and the focus on creativity and the automation of everything else. I would hope that this pendulum swing that happened over the past decade, with always being number crunchers and pipeline coverage and everything that is still important, of course, because without sales, we don't have business. I would hope that the insights and the tooling and your ability to create that type of report, like all that stuff, is more automated, so that we can spend more time thinking about the story than anything else. One thing that we like to say, and I've been talking about for a while now, is that eventually everybody is going to have AI tools. Everyone. The only competitive advantage that you have as a business are your people. So you either optimize them or you don't. And it's a competitive advantage now if you do it correctly, but there's going to come a point where it's not. And you have to invest in people. So I truly believe that this idea of human intelligence and human performance will become even more important in the future because of this. I think it's more leverage than anything else. But I don't know if that's a great prediction, other than I just hope creativity doesn't die a slow death.
I love that answer. And I think that's the right answer, or just no one's working anymore.
Or it's dystopia.
or no one.
Idiocracy. Was it Idiocracy, the movie where
Yeah,
it's like
idiocracy, or maybe it's more like I predicted there's a scenario it becomes like the Time Machine where there's the Eloi and the Morlock, and the Eloi are the people who use AI and can't do anything for themselves, and the Morlock are sort of the ones who they know how to use AI appropriately, but they're not outsourcing their life to machines. Is another one I think.
it's probably it's probably what's going to happen, honestly. But let's hope that's not the case.
Yeah, I actually do think there's a lot of good stories here, and I think the stories are parables and not what actually is going to happen. These are extreme versions of what we'll get. Kyle, this has been a great conversation. Where can people go to connect with you online?
Best place to go is LinkedIn. It's where I spend the most time. So search me on LinkedIn. You can go to therevenuediaries.com if you want to read my stuff, but LinkedIn's the best place to go.
Awesome. Well, we'll put some links to connect with Kyle and also check out his company in the show notes. And thanks everyone for tuning in. We will see you next time.
Thank you.